everyone hear me okay? Following in Nick's examples, I brought giveaways as well, but you're going to have to earn them. I'm very lucky. I actually have helped contribute to Brett's new book, Bank 3.0. So throughout my presentation, pay attention. I am going to ask some questions. I have 2 copies of the book to give away. I am going to disappoint you a little bit. I'm not going to talk about Moven at all today. I think it's important for me to step away from Moven in terms of what we're doing and so forth, and talk about something very different as to what I'm actually doing. And the important questions of around, sorry, is this on? There we go. Is around why does movement exist? Because understanding this message is more important than what we're actually doing. You know, it's great seeing all the stuff there from Nick around what Ramsey is doing, and actually, you know, even as a career digital banker, that's definitely a benchmark for Australia. Great to see this kind of stuff. What I want to take you through a journey today is, when you think about digital, when you think about mobile, when you think about all these things that Nick's just taken you through, they're the result, they're the solution, they're your end result. But psychologically, what you have to do as an organisation internally is think about why you need to do these things. Why? How do you justify these things? What's the reason or the approaches you need to take to adapting to the new consumer, to the new consumer market, to the behaviours those consumers are doing? Because without that empathy or that dialogue, you're going to struggle not only on this iteration, but the next iteration of innovation as well. So I'm going to go through a very important discussion of why. Why are we doing this sort of thing? Again, because, and I start out with a very biased view. My view of banking basically is that banking has got to the point where they are completely blind and dependent. I have heard so many excuses in the last 5 years as to why things haven't happened, why they haven't gone mobile, why banks are focusing on high net worth. They're waiting for the regulator to tell them what to do. These are just excuses. Excuses to essentially procrastinate and sit there while other innovators come and eat their lunch. The likes of Ubank is exactly like that. Ubank is an initiative to push beyond those excuses, to actually execute. And I'm going to take you later through some other innovators that have decided that we're not waiting for permission. We're just going to go out and do something and change complete industries. And to help tell my story, I have a little friend here, Isaac Lim. And this is where our first giveaway will come in, so pay attention. Isaac Lim was born on the 27th of June 2007, one of the most important dates in banking. Can anyone in this room tell me why? You said what's happening? One book to them. Little Isaac is born the exact same day as the iPhone. One of the most disruptive technologies we've seen in our lifetime. And it's not because it's the iPhone, it's because what it enables. It enables an ecosystem that has completely changed how we behave with technology. It's put a computer in our pocket with an ecosystem for deploying applications and services at the most convenient and cost-effective way in the world. You know, I think Apple said the other day that we've globally downloaded like 10 billion apps. You know, volumes for these sort of things have changed how we do things. Almost every bank in this room, I can guarantee, has an iPhone app now. And let's not forget, look at this, 2007, that's not that long ago. Isaac's world is very different to the ones that we might have grown up with. He grows up in a world where his psychological norms, the things that are normal in his life, his associations, his expectations of service, brand, how things operate are very different, and I'll tell you why. And this is the best example possible. Who here did their academic studies using these books? Isaac will never use Encyclopedia Britannica. 244 years in print. In 2011, stopped printing these books. Why? Because a medium like Wikipedia or the internet has completely replaced the medium that Britannica delivers. The important part here is Britannica's work was never books. It was the knowledge that they documented and distributed. And the reality is that knowledge can be documented and distributed in a lot more cost-effective, fast, high-iterative platform like the internet. Isaac will never see this stuff on his doorstep. Junk mail. Junk mail is literally becoming more noise than the banner ads you see on Facebook. You know, there's a whole raft of people now have no jump out signs, or they just completely ignore this stuff, won't even read it. Yet still hundreds of millions of dollars globally are spent on brochures. Isaac will never go to a peep show. Why? Because we've actually changed the normal distribution. Previously, this was his only outlet to find some adult entertainment. He can now do this in the comfort of his own home. He can complete an anonymity. A complete disruption of industries. It's one of the oldest industries in the world. I don't like to use adult reference all the time, but prostitution is one of the oldest careers in the world. It's been completely disrupted by digital disintermediation. There's actually some very interesting studies out there that shows that prostitution is no longer something that happens on the street or in a brothel. And now these working girls stay at home and wait for someone on the internet to contact them. Their disruption model, their distribution model has completely changed. Classifieds. Isaac will never use the classifieds. Craigslist, eBay have replaced us as new mediums. How we actually interact with people saying, you know, I've got a second-hand iPhone, how am I going to sell it? I need a painter, where am I going to find one? Okay. Isaac, then, that's highly lucky. Isaac's birthday wasn't even put into classifieds in the birth, deaths, and marriages. You'll never see the yellow pages or a landline. Landlines globally is declining at massive rates. People are voluntarily opting out of the yellow pages. In fact, in most countries, the only thing keeping the yellow pages alive is government policy. Because it's like payphones. Payphones have to be offered by Telstra as an obligation as a public utility. It goes the same as the yellow pages now. Even though it's fully available online, it's almost a year old when it actually when it's a publication. It's still forced into our hands. This is getting some newer technologies now. Isaac won't even know what this machine is. You tell him, you fax it in, and you're like, what's a fax? Like Nick, I think, was it Nick or someone said that most of these kids don't know Nokia anymore because this thing's been basically pushed out of our norm. The reference point is gone. You'll probably unlikely use an optical disc. Now, optical discs at a commercial scale only came in the mid-90s. Already, other mediums are replacing it. This is considered archaic now. The idea that you have to put data on a disc and then distribute either as music, movies, data, software, and so forth is completely being removed. Apple has their own software store now online. Windows 8 has the same. Music is available through iTunes, through Spotify, and so forth. Alternatives are coming to actually distribute the exact same product on a different medium. Oh, whoa, now it's going too fast. This thing's playing out. Isaac will unlikely use cable networking. Wireless networking is replacing networking globally. Most banks now have actually even embraced the idea of wireless. The laggards, as they call banks, have actually adopted the idea that you can take your laptop and move it around. And it's quite foreign back when I started banking. And you had to have a physical point. Even for my remote access from home, I had to have a physical connection. My VPN wouldn't work over a wireless connection. It was considered banned. The more important trends here we see here is that Isaac will never visit one of these two stores. He'll never go to a bookstore, and he'll very unlikely go and rent a movie at his local video store. Because their whole distribution of those products, now that the optical disc is gone and so forth, has been completely changed, almost overnight. Borders was the #1 bookseller in 2007. 2007, not that long ago, 5 years ago. In 2008, the Kindle was introduced for the very first time. From 2008 to 2011, just 3 years, Borders went bankrupt. Purely down to one device, the Amazon Kindle, the e-reader. That could not only just change the way the product got sold, so Amazon's first innovation was sell a physical book through a digital medium, but still send it out. But when they went to sell a book as digital content over a digital medium, Borders became irrelevant. And as we've just seen with brands, if you can't sell a product digitally, if you require someone to go to a physical location, you're under a lot of threat in the next couple of years because Isaac won't choose you as a bank. And whole generations that grow up like Isaac, and I'll show you a few of his friends in a second, won't choose you as a bank because they have to go to a bank branch to do something. Who else do we know uses physical mediums? Just said, banks particularly I'll say in this country, the big four, are very much dependent on their branch networks, to the point where it actually scares me. I'm very fortunate I get a chance to speak to a lot of banking executives around the world. I'm speaking to the head of retail bank for a large bank in the region, and he's telling me customers want branches. We get 99.9% of our mortgages through our branches. So mortgages are one of the biggest cash cows. Why would we close our branches? I said, can you buy a mortgage any other way? What do you think his answer was? No. You have to come to a branch. Well, that's a false economy. You're forcing people to come that way. If they can buy it online, it's an alternative. They choose an alternative. Interesting stat, said, I think Nick touched this as well, is that in Sweden, I can't find any Australian stats on this, 88% of Swedes did not go to a branch last year, at all. And interesting, in that 12%, 74% of those people were forced to go to a branch. Either to re-sign an identity form, to get them to sign forms for their mortgage, to pick up a replacement credit card. But the only scenario is now that we actually go to a bank branch anymore. Little Isaac won't even know what this is. Does anyone know what this is? My business partner, Brett King, he tells a fantastic story about his daughter, Hannah. Hannah is now 12 years of age. Through Brett's life, and he's a bit of a global citizen, he's lived in Dubai, Hong Kong, and now New York. Hannah, at the age of 12, has her best friend lived in Dubai, and on her birthday, and her friend's birthday was actually, her dad said, dude, Hannah, let's send some money to your friend for her birthday. Let's send $50. And as a little test, he goes, Hannah, how should we do that? What do you think your response was? He was, Daddy, email or SMS it to her. Daddy, easy, she'll get it straight away. And that was her norm, that was her first response. Then he did something very interesting. He goes, Hannah, what if we did this? What if we get a little piece of paper? We'll write a name on it. We'll write $50 on it. We'll put it in an envelope, in a card, put it in the mail, put a stamp on it, put it in the post box, and US Postal Service sends to Dubai. Your friend will get the mail, a nice little card, a little piece of paper, there's $50 on it. She'll go down to her bank, and she'll hand out that piece of paper, and they'll give her $50 back. Her response was, huh? That'll never work. Yet this is something that's become a utility, a norm in our society. It's in our heads. We know what checks are. There's a whole generation coming that won't even associate with this as an alternative. Second book giveaway. Who can tell me why this is the most important number in banking? Anyone here in originations? I have to give away number 17.
It's a lucky number.
It is a lucky number. But overwhelmingly, globally, and this is even more prominent in Australia, at the age of 17, we tend to choose our primary bank for life. That's overwhelming stat, is that at the age of 17 is usually around your first employment or you're about to go to university, which is a major event for you to get your first transactional account or checking account. And that relationship, that brand association, is likely to stick for life. The only other events that can change that is a mortgage or an investment product. So this is a very important age to pick up a customer. Very, very important, because most of the deposits in your books today are based on getting people at this age. One of the best case studies of why this number is so important is to know, why is CBA the #1 retail deposit holder in Australia today? The Dolomite account. The Dolomite account was a brand association with children at primary school age, and when they turned 17, they had a couple $1,000s in the bank. Who do you think they opened their account with? Commonwealth Bank. Very important behavioural insight that they did when I was a kid. My first bank account was actually with the State Bank of Victoria, which is now Commonwealth Bank. It was around that brand association meant that when I chose my first bank, it was not even a question. So we come back to little Isaac. You're looking for me, aren't you? I thought so. I'll put this down and I'll just point to you. Little Isaac. We come back to him as an important milestone to completely get it. Is that he will choose his primary bank in 2023. What do we think 10 years? We've got some time. The boy that's grown up in all those things we've just covered, that we have 10 years to get ready for him. Okay? But here's his friend, Timmy. Timmy's an angry little aggressive boy. He likes to start fights at school. But he's born 21st of November 2000. Okay, another opportunity to get a book. What's important about his birthday? No, next one. He's born the same day as the very first smartphone, the Nokia communicator. The most significant move forward in terms of actual communications technology. Who here actually owned a Nokia communicator? It was a big breakthrough actually. We had little Java apps, we had applications running on our phone. It actually looked quite cool. There's another important part of his date of birth. Look at the next one. He will actually choose his primary banking relationship in just 4 years. 4 years' time. Someone who's grown up where smartphones has always been there will choose their primary banking relationship in just 4 years. He's also born the same day as PayPal. PayPal is not new to him. PayPal is the norm. Sending money via email addresses, so that no need for knowing who you bank with, your BSB and your account number. You just send to scott@hotmail.com and you get money. That's a norm in his head. So we have to remember this is why things like, we've got right now, Kaching at CBA has just done Facebook money send, so we can actually send using your Facebook friends. It's an important association because it decouples or removes the friction from how we share money between each other. Let's get more real. Isaac and Ethan. These are really important customers now. These are on the cusp of very, very important. These are the change makers. These two examples are Ethan on the right, Isabel on the left, are a demonstration of how urgent the situation is now. Ethan was born the same day as the iPod. Okay? Remember this old archaic thing? This is an antique by now. Ethan grows up in a world where the distribution of product digitally is a norm. Think about that. The iTunes store, how we buy music, how he expects and associates with the provision of services. His world is shaped by that. And he'll choose his primary banking relationship in just 4 years. His sister Isabel, born the same day as Google. She doesn't know about Alta Vista and all the ones before that, or even bulletin boards, if anyone uses those. She grew up in a world where Googling it is a norm. All of a sudden, the word search has been replaced with you just Google it. And she will choose her primary banking relationship next year. This is how critical it is. So I actually say very boldly that the years of transformation are 2014 to 2018. Why? Because during those years, the very large mass of Gen Y will enter the workforce. Millions in Australia, for instance, millions will enter the workforce. Choose their primary banking relationship, an association that will happen for life, and their whole choice, their expectation of service, is based on everything I've just told you. So you have to ask yourself a question. I know Nick's actually done a pretty good job here. But ask yourself, are you ready to bank Isabel next year? Because if she has to go to your bank branch, she's unlikely going to bank with you. If she has to remember BSBs and account numbers, she's unlikely going to bank with you. If her friends didn't tell her about your bank on Facebook or Twitter or a blog, she's unlikely to bank with you. And this is next year. Very, very urgent. So let's talk about more market observations around what's happened in that time to make that happen. We've very become digital. Our whole world is digital. Look, I can see at least 7 iPads in the room. Now, our lives have changed. Computing has become mobilised. Everything is digital. My norm, for instance, now, I'm considered Gen X, but my norm is I don't buy physical magazines anymore. If it doesn't come on Kindle or if it doesn't come on newsstand, I don't buy your magazine. That's a lifestyle choice, because no one can carry around it. I mean, carrying around these 2 books was enough. But the big thing that's happened in there, which I spoke about before, is the democratization of opinion. No longer do we live in a world where brands are in control of the perception of their brand. The reality is the consumer, the customer is now in control. And I'll show an example later of how compelling that can be. Is if Nick doesn't like your brand and he tells his 1,000 followers on Twitter, likely those 1,000 people also won't like your brand. And no matter what you tell Nick's friends, they will believe Nick before they believe you. It's basically an overwhelming trend of, I trust my friends more than I trust you, your brand. And that even applies to banks. And this is how much noise you may or may not be paying attention to. Facebook and Twitter are just one of dozens of platforms where opinion is shared. Blogs are a massive commodity now around the world, around influence. Now, people's whole careers now are based on blogging, writing opinion pieces on things, from makeup to bank brands to mortgage choices. It's around these things are now market influencers at such significant levels. I mean, the reality is that the blogs of TechCrunch, Engadget, Gizmodo, all they are is they were early adopter guys that started writing reviews about the latest gadgets. They've now become market influencers on adoption in technology. And this is how fast it moves. I mean, there's so many numbers here, and I think the YouTube one's going even further. What it says here is in 1 minute, we watched 30 hours of video on YouTube. 30 hours, it's actually up to about 35 hours now. We are consuming data and producing data at such velocity now that if you aren't paying attention to even 1% of this, you're already behind the game. And one of the greatest case studies is actually the Debtor Revolt from Ann Mitch in the United States, who actually used YouTube to overrule Bank of America's APR ruling on a credit card. They changed it from 19 to 27%. She put a 3-minute video on YouTube. 7 days later, 48 million people had seen her video, and Bank of America was forced to publicly apologise and change her rate back. Never before has that power happened before. And what happens is this is the result. We see new services that set the world's benchmarks. Spotify, and Netflix. We're all familiar with these brands. These now are the brands that set the psychological norm for your consumer. The idea that if you're not selling something physical, if I have to go anywhere for a physical product, for a non-physical product, you're gone, you're out, you're behind, you're yesterday's news. If these are the brands you should be competing with, and it's great that Nick's aspiring to be Eubank, that's only a peer. I'd say, forget that. You want to be better than Facebook. You want to be better than Spotify. Look at their models of how they distribute product. Sorry, I'm picking your idea. And what's actually important there is the modality shift. Because when those services are not channel plays, they're not product plays. They are multi-channel, or I call platform experiences. Spotify, as a music provider, is a platform that doesn't care. Mobile, web, app, whatever it is. The service is consistent across every form of distribution, which makes modality extremely important. Because then I can open my iPhone app, my iPad app, I can open the web and an internet kiosk, and I get the same customer experience. Put in my credentials and I get access to all of my music. So let's take a little bit of a retroactive. Whose board looks like this? Today, and I know I've got a credit in the rooms, and you guys are a little bit more forward, but if I went into the ANZ, the CBA, the NAB, or Westpac boardrooms, and I have been in 3 of those boardrooms, they look like this. There's a little bit more colour, and the suits are a bit fancier now, they wear pink shirts. But it still looks like this. Most banks are run by gentlemen's clubs. And their most innovative thing they've done in the last 10 years is they got a BlackBerry. Many board members actually still have their original BlackBerries as well. They've gotten used to it, they're not prepared to move on. And that becomes an important part of the psychology of why banks have been the laggards in this space. Because the decision makers are not connected, even psychologically, have no empathy for the consumer anymore. So they are likely to run their businesses like this. And this is what I equate it to, is that how many of you still carry a leather pouch on your hip full of gold-pressed coins? Anyone? Unlikely. Next one. Who carries a wad of cash? All of your savings in cash. No one does anymore. If you're in Vietnam, to carry just 1 month's salary, you need a suitcase. Dong is just a terrible currency in terms of its numerical notes. Literally, you need a suitcase to buy a hamburger. We've seen a lot of other innovations. Who carries their checkbooks on them anymore? These are all evolutions that banking has seen over the last decades or centuries. I mean, the coins ones are obviously a very, very old one, but these are the more recent ones. Then we're moved into the whole debit card space, of credit cards, debit cards, prepaid cards. But the important part is, money is now digital. Less than 1% of global currency is transacted in any physical form. Being that is that no more checks, no more cash, no more coins. Global currency is on decline, yet costs a fortune to maintain. With this in mind, if you start realising that money is digital, then you'll realise that your core commodity, which is essentially just money, a value exchange, is no different to what Borders just saw in the book space. They just sell content. So what happens when you don't listen to the consumer? When you don't pay attention to what they're saying? They do things like this. I just referred to the debtor revolt. Is that when you don't keep up with what the consumer is actually doing, you open yourself to speculation, to criticism, and banks have got a lot of criticism in the last 3 years. With the financial crisis, and almost every bank in the world was affected by the reputational damage of the bailouts in the United States. You've actually created huge mistrust. And if you inject mistrust into a democratized economy, particularly from the opinion point with social media, these kind of things happen very, very fast. It also gets even worse when you start rejecting more customers. Credit dried up globally after the financial crisis. And that's just a way of actually pissing off the customer even more. When you start telling them, no, sorry, you can't have a 4-bedroom house, you have to buy the 3-bedroom one, that annoys the customer. When you say to the shopaholic, no, you can't have those new shoes, again, you're annoying the customer. They now have a form to express that. What's actually happened is we're seeing this globally. People are opting out of formal financial products. But by formal, I mean a product issued by a traditional, licensed, deposit-taking institution, a checking account or a savings account. They're actually doing this. This is the largest growing deposit product in the world, the fastest growing deposit in the world. Green Dot, they come from a background of doing gift cards, travel cards, and so forth. They did a partnership with Visa to actually do what's called a reloadable prepaid card in the United States. This now grows at 37% per annum. It's close to over $4 billion in deposits. Huge deposit base. And why is this the product? Because everything I've just spoken about is you can pick this product up at your local 7-Eleven, you can buy it online, you can get it from a Facebook app if you want, activate it immediately. KYC is almost negligent in terms of process overhead, and you have all the utility that debit card you had previously from your bank. But the best bit is the underlying economics of this. Is Gen Ys like control. They're in a world where they're used to having information at their hand. So what does prepaid have that's different to a standard checking account? And the reality is if you look at a checking account, there's all these triggers that could have overdrawn fees, late fees, debit interest, credit interest, all these fees, these transactions that are in that account. They're like, what the hell is this? Do they net out? Am I losing money? Am I making money? And the reality is most Gen Ys have no idea. You take a prepaid card, which is non-interest bearing, non-interest paying, and you simplify the product. It's literally just saying, how much money do I have? I pay for my consumption, for fees and interchange and so forth, but I don't have to worry about overdrawn fees because this account will never overdraw. I don't have to worry about debit interest and credit interest transactions because this doesn't have interest. It simplifies the product. The reality is most transactional accounts today, interest is irrelevant. You're talking about cents now. So why do we keep complicating our products by keeping them in? And it really appeals to the idea of transparency around, in a world where anything can be found on the internet, and it doesn't matter how niche your interest is, you can find someone like you. If you have a mad passion for doing Pakistani rupee conversions to Egyptian currency. I'm pretty sure there's a community for you out there. So transparency now is an end where you have to realize that you can't hide anything anymore. If your boardroom is hiding anything, I'm pretty sure it's going to come out very soon. Because people ask questions. So we come back to our little friends. How does he survive? How does this crippled old man, this is our banker up here, blind and dependent on this guy who's got a boat, how does he survive in the new world? What does he need to do? And this is my first point, my first tip. Excuses have to be thrown out the door. The idea of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which actually clouds a lot of innovation in banking, the reasons why most people hold back on investment in mobile, digital, social media, is because there's all this noise around the fears in those spaces, the uncertainties, the doubts. It's around how do we start saying, stop thinking about all the negative scenarios and just start making some progress. And the important part is this. Obama was elected in 2008 for one of the most compelling and uninteresting reasons in history. He did nothing policy-wise, he did nothing radical, he just promised change to Gen Y. That put him in office, the most powerful nation in the world. Basically promising change these days is as good as doing change. This isn't psychological, it's around how do we actually then start talking about the life of the consumer? How do we then have empathy for the pains we go through? You think about those tiny little frustrating scenarios you have in your everyday life. They can now be magnified 100 times over. They could be, you're annoyed at the traffic on the highway. You're annoyed at the price of your coffee's gone up. All those tiny little frustrations are opportunities for someone to do a better job. There's 1%ers all over the world. And those little 1%ers are going to make the difference between different service providers because it's all about my life now. It's all about how do you fit into my life. I'm not coming to you anymore, you've got to come to me. This is why Spotify and iTunes are so compelling as offerings and Kindle, because those offerings come to you. And what actually results is some very interesting innovations. Right now, I didn't put my own company up there deliberately, I don't want to blow my own horn, is these are some of the most disruptive financial services companies in the world today. PayPal did nothing more than remove the friction of having to know where someone banks when you send money to and from them. They also did e-commerce as well, but the P2P was their main innovation. Square removed all the friction for a small business to actually start accepting credit cards at a flat rate. So now anyone in the United States can accept credit cards at 2.75% per transaction. Simple actually said, we're going to remove all the clutter. We're going to run a whole retail bank based on the prepaid card I spoke about before. Dwala, and this is a very important one. I think Cuscal is trying to do a very similar thing. Is Dwala realised that one of the biggest pain points in the US economy today is the T+1, T+2 ACH model. The idea that if you bank with another bank, it takes 1 or 2 days for my money to get to you. So Dwala is doing one thing. They're going after the clearinghouse. They're going to completely replace the clearinghouse with real-time settlement. Now that eats up a lot of overnight money market floats for a lot of banks. But it's what the customer wants. They expect this. Everything else is real time. Why can't I money? And Level Up is gamifying your retail experiences around how do you gamify loyalty and rewards at a point of sale so that you get if you come back to the same shop, we'll give you a 5% discount. So let's get into a little bit more detail. This is Square. The numbers have actually grown. Square now does about $12 billion annually. Next one. But this is where Square's innovation is. This is the new retail experience. I do this in the US all the time, where my favourite coffee shop, I think it's the top there, Gregory's Coffee, is when I walk in there, sorry, to those who spoke to me last night, I don't drink coffee anymore. Is you go in, I don't take out anything. My wallet stays in my pocket. In fact, a lot of cases my wallet stays in my office. I open my smartphone app, I say Gregory's Open Tab. That's this green button here. It's literally Open Tab. When I go to order my triple espresso, this is what the merchant sees. It says, Zoe's in your store, triple espresso, charge Zoe. Transaction's done. there was 2 buttons clicked. I said I was in the store, and they said purchase. Zoe made this purchase. A lot simpler, a lot faster, and less friction than any other alternative, cash, card, or check. PayPal is doing massive numbers still. Again, $12 billion they did last year, just on mobile alone. Just on mobile. Who knows what they did on e-com. And mobile ecosystems are growing so fast. We've all heard of Google Wallet. Visa did a massive ecosystem deployment for the London Olympics. Okay? These things are happening all around the world. As I think, as Nick said, that essentially if you don't have someone working on mobile today, your business is under strong threat. Very, very strong threat. Because he's one of the market leaders in Australia. I like my friends Andy and Mike at CBA. They've done something very transformational here. And it's not just mobile banking. They've gone beyond that. They've created the ecosystem. The idea that I can pay a friend using Facebook simplifies how I share money. The fact that I can do a lot of things with a lot less friction means that this is a very compelling offering to the consumer. The smartphone, in many cases, is all I need. This also replaces my MasterCard. If I have the sleeve on, I no longer need to carry on my MasterCard. So when you see innovators like this, so we've got the negatives, I'll just show you some very positives, is understanding why consumers and how they have influence amongst this shift. And what I want to do is, this is probably one of the most illustrative slides on why you should believe. In 2011, this is a 3-month period of the Bank of America share price, mapping 2 very important things. The green number up here is the share price. Actually, do I have a slide for that? Cool. So the green number here, share price. The cumulative, this black line is the cumulative sentiment, but the most important line here is the net sentiment. And this is using sentiment analysis on Twitter, blogs, Facebook, and so forth. What we actually see is something very compelling. With almost 86% accuracy, sentiment predicts peaks, troughs, ups, and downs with 48 hours notice, every single time. It's no wonder that right now one of the biggest emerging trends in Silicon Valley is actually sentiment-based algorithmic trading, using Twitter, Facebook, and blogs to understand sentiment and to do automatic trading based on that. That's quite a scary thought, because it means that Facebook suddenly controls the share price of your bank. But pause. Back. But what I actually see here is not just that, it can even tell the depth of those changes. This is actually saying that sentiment, or generally, is influencing traders, mums and dads, investment banks, on how they actually do their share trading on your brand. Imagine if you go to your CEO and say, look, guess what? I can tell you exactly where our share price is going to go with 48 hours notice. They will love you. Doing shorts and longs all over the place to actually try and rectify the brand. So let's make it relevant to you guys. What's in it for you? What's in it? It actually says what's in it for me. So looking at the Australian market, is you're actually, as Nick pointed out before, you have an opportunity sitting in front of you like no other nation. There's very few nations that have a stronger opportunity to transform a market than Australia. I mean transform in a very deliberate way. These things could go against you just as well as they could go for you. The numbers here, as I said, phone penetration, as Nick pointed out, most people have more than one phone. There is more phones in this country than there is people, basically. 52% of them are smartphone owners, but very importantly, there's a growing trend. I think this is a 2011 number, I can't find a 2012 number, is people are shifting in the millions from feature phones to smartphones. In the millions. It's not going to be long until this number, I think it's actually 2017, this is forecasted to move into the 80s in terms of percentage penetration. And then most of these numbers I'm going to tell you, because Nick's already told you, is around the preference for mobile as a technology is very, very strong. So all the metrics are there. The numbers are there. The consumer behaviour is in front of you. This is your opportunity now. The market is telling you what to do. It's your choice whether you listen or not. So I'm going to tell you what to do. And the best way to do it is to look outside banking. Forget about being makers for a second. Let's imagine we're at Google. Actually, there's a very funny movie coming up with, anyone who's a Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson fan, they've got a movie coming up where they're actually interns at Google. So I'm looking forward to this, will be very fun. It's around thinking like Google. What will they do? And it's important here. This is an illustration of how tough your challenge is. Can anyone here fly a plane? Actually, one. Well, I usually would say after that, anyone here fly 747. And I say, how would you land a 747 here? Because all the parameters are there. That airstrip is long enough to land a 747. But that looks damn scary, doesn't it? Even as a passenger getting that plane, knowing that the guy has done 11,000 hours, I would be scared landing there. So how do you start realizing different approaches to market? And this is one of my most important sayings. This is the new norm. What previously took you 6 months, now has to take you 3 days. It can't cost millions. It can't go through massive oversight, compliance, and so forth to do things. And I'm not talking about doing radical changes. I'm thinking, how do you validate your directions in tiny little increments? There's a great, if anyone wants, Lean Startup Machine is a company that I do some mentoring with and advisory work. And what they do is they champion the idea of ideation process, doing tiny little bets, like lots and lots of tiny little bets. But not just doing those bets, getting out in the street and asking consumers whether that bet's right or wrong. So no more ivory tower ideation, no more management committees making decisions, getting out there with hard numbers and literally asking everyone, will this work? And this is one of the important parts. I had a great chat with Cam last night, is that if you look at the disruptors I spoke about last night, not a single one of them is a technology department. Not one. They don't even have the idea of a cost center. Yet most banks still have the idea of a cost center driven technology business. In the market leaders, the market disruptors, the people that write the code sit next to the people that do the strategy, or next to their GMs and so forth. So that you can, if you have a crazy idea, you can literally turn to your engineer and go, is that possible? And they'll tell you straight away. And it's amazingly how passionate your technologists get when they start actually feel like they're contributing as a part of the business. So my first tip, this is a very, very challenging one for a bank, dissolve your cost-driven technology businesses. Put all those resources back into the business, into the areas they specialize in. So if someone's in custom data analytics, put them actually in the customer analytics team or marketing team. If someone works in the warehouse, combine the business intelligence team into one. Key things, because then you have the right conversations happening at higher velocity, at faster rates. No longer do you need to spend $10,000 to put up a work request to go from this guy to this guy, only for it to be declined. Realize that you're now about creating experiences. Products, the idea of products is dead. Customers don't buy products, they buy experiences. And I'll show you a very illustrative way. Is in a world where mobility and utility is possible, everything that you sell can be provided anywhere. Interesting statistic in Sydney, 33% of all restaurant searches, all in Sydney, are done online within an hour of someone actually going to the restaurant. 33%. That's the kind of expectation or experience you have to compete with. Creating utility anytime, on demand, anywhere. And this is where I talk about the idea of creating experiences. People don't buy mortgages. No one says, I want to buy a mortgage. They say, I want to buy a home. My first home, my second home, my investment property. And that journey starts well before they even contact the bank. With the amount of mortgage comparison tools online, the amount of search comparison tools online today, it's very clear that the customer's journey from the end result of getting to a mortgage starts well before you, and it has nothing to do with your product. It has to do with the lifestyle of buying a house. Shopping. This is where credit cards, this is why credit cards exist. No one wants to buy a credit card, they want to go shopping. They want to go out and be with their friends and family, to have disposable income, to enjoy things in life. This is where your product has to fit in. Is if you have a transactional product and you don't understand how your product fits into this scenario, start asking your customers. Because more than likely, they could be laughing about how bad your customer service is or your call center is. is understanding in those conversations. How can you listen to them? How can you empower people so that their lifestyle is of their own choice? That they don't have to go outside their norm, outside their behavioural loop to connect with your brand. That they become champions of your brand inside their life. Anytime, the idea that I posted a photo up on my blog the other day of the first Caribbean bank, which is closed 5 days a week. And then, if you're closed 5 days a week, how are you doing any business? And on the 2 days they're open, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That world is gone. You have to anytime, anywhere. Next one. Always banking, never to bank. This is a very important slide. This is a guy who sells tie-dye t-shirts in San Francisco. What do you think his largest revenue line is? He's actually a bank branch. Using point-of-sale technology, which he has behind his bucket, using a mobile phone, he can do deposits and withdrawals on prepaid cards. He can also provide them if he wants, he can actually sell them. This is your branch of tomorrow. Because he will appeal to the person that's just walked into the market, let's say a flea market or a trader's market, and everyone's accepting flips in cash. And you come on with your debit card. I don't have an ATM. You can go to this guy, he has a sign up there that says, for a certain fee, I'll give you cash and your card. You use a point-of-sale machine, you have cash, and you go and buy your organic carrots. This is the bank branch of the future. This is the customer experience of the future. This is what we should all be aspiring to. The idea that people will be delighted with their service, no matter where they are. The word I pin to this is the idea of serendipity. You have so much data on your customers today, very, very little of it is turned into insight. Reality is if someone would actually walk into your branch, I could, with 85% accuracy, guarantee you could predict why they're in your branch. But how many banks actually do that? Reality is they might know that they've got a pending mortgage application, or they're coming in for a transaction dispute, or they're coming in to collect a card. The second they walk into that branch, you should know who they are and treat them accordingly to wow them. There's more than enough data on them. And to use the words of a banker, which I heard speak at Next Bank last year, is take the critical pieces around how you actually derive those products. Is around realize exactly the very thing. You sell experiences now, not products. When you build those experiences, have empathy for the people you're building those experiences for. The experience for a little tech-savvy Gen Y is very different for a single mother. Have empathy for that and realize that they have different experiences, they have different provision needs, service expectations. I'm sorry, experiment and fail. And this is the important one I said before. Be prepared to make little bets. Little tiny bets that you can validate very, very fast. Validate whether they are invalid or valid, move forward, scale the ones that are successful, and basically take the uncertainty out of your execution. Remember that the customer now is the customer. In some cases, they even own your brand now. And the last one here is boring people don't make great experiences. Start hiring crazy people. Start hiring creative people. People that have never worked in banking before. Take someone who's worked, in FMCG before, or data analytics or innovation. People who have never worked in banks before. The banker I spoke about before, Aman Lorraine, who works at Standard Chartered, he wasn't a banker before he started at Standard Chartered. He now runs Breeze, one of the most successful digital brands in Singapore for a bank. So it's time to transform. And the analogy I always used to say is, we're caterpillars today. How do we become butterflies tomorrow? And this is one of the best examples, I said using Lean Startup Machines methodology again. If anyone doesn't know where this comes from, it comes from a book written by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup. And it's basically a high-velocity experimentation process that in the right hands can be used to guide you at finite amounts of resource. Like I'm talking tiny amounts of time and money. The idea that you can document what your potential ideas are, test them very, very fast, move on if they are bad ideas. But build, measure, learn. The idea of get the minimum amount of product to market you need to test your assumption, to test a market possibility. If it doesn't work, drop it, move on. Fast. Because startups do this cycle in 48 to 72 hours. They are learning at iterations so fast. We have to start realizing how can we bring those kind of cycles into banks. And when I worked in ideation for a bank, the ideation process, just the approval process, took 6 months. By that point in time, the market opportunity is over. We've spent thousands of dollars to actually get through. And when you're doing that, is realize that you have to start documenting or having empathy for the user's experience. You know, Nick spoke about UX and so forth. Is get the idea out of storyboarding. Find those people in your teams, either they are currently user experience designers or they're just great drawers, and start literally writing comics of your customer journeys. The reason I say this is because this creates an amazing amount of empathy for the context of where your service is going to be engaged. The idea that you know that most people pay their bills while riding the bus on the way home. Draw that as a cartoon. Make that as an illustration of how where you aspire your service to be used. This guy here, Steve Blank, he is the grandfather or the godfather, you might say, of ideation. He says a very important thing: keep calm and get out of the building. You're not going to solve a single one of your customers' problems sitting at your desk. So if you have a really cool idea, maybe ask a couple of your colleagues, get on your lunch break and ask 20 people about your idea. See if there's a pattern. Is there enough of an opportunity for you to take this further? If you think, well, I think we should do a Windows 8 mobile app. Okay, let's go test our market really, really quickly. Get out of the building. How many people within our vicinity can we find that actually have Windows 8 mobile? That takes like 1 or 2 hours, no money, and you can validate something very, very quickly. Because until you see a pattern, it's not worth investing any more effort into it. You see his book, The 4 Stages to Epiphany. This literally is how do you come to an epiphany of what you should be doing. When you build those experiences, make sure they're consistent. And Nick was saying before, is that having that, it doesn't matter if you're a full site on your web, if you're full site on the mobile, is how do you realize that your brand needs to maintain some continuity across multiple platforms? And the best way I see that is to think about Google. One of my predictions for 2013 is that Google will become even more powerful this year than it was last year. Why? Because Google's experience now is a platform. It's agnostic of the device or the channel you're actually using it through. It has what's called a contextualization engine. So it means that Google renders its whole experience based on knowing what device are you on, where you come from, what country are you in, what language do you normally speak, and changes everything on the fly for you. Behind the scenes, Google is just still Google. It's just this nice little context layer in front. And that context layer means that the Google core products can remain consistent, but specific to the individual's context and behavioural needs. Join the conversations. As Nick just pointed out, that social media can go for you or against you very fast. Even if it's just to listen. Get out there and realise, what are people saying about your brand, your services? What do they say when they're pissed off with you or have a bad experience? Address those things. It's just been nothing else, just join the experience, join the conversation. If you want even more knowledge, these are my 4 Bibles. These are the 4 books that I say if you have to read 4 books, these are the 4 you have to read. These 4 books will change banking because they've changed every other industry already. On the far left is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And that's around having empathy around why things exist, why things happen. And that's why I took the example of Mobilise Academy's life. The 3rd screen is around the power of mobility. What can these little mobile devices really do? Beyond just mobile banking and mobile websites, but what can they really do in other form factors? As we pointed out, mobile calculators. One of the really cool things I've seen as well, CBA has that augmented reality real estate app where you actually hold it up to a property and it'll tell you the last list price, what it sold for, how much you can finance a house for, where's the nearest school, public transport, grocery shop, just by holding your phone up to a house. And mobile has an amazing potential. Banks tap less than 1% of it. Bank 3.0, which we've got here, I helped Brett write. And the last one there is Steve Blank's The 4 Stages to Epiphany. They should be on your bookshelf. If you want to be an innovator, these are your 4 books. So this is my summary. Really, really simple. If you fell asleep, if you were taking a call in the last hour, pay attention now. This is the 4 things you have to remember. First, understand the consumer's behaviour. Have empathy, storyboard. Brainstorm the consumer's behaviour before you do products. Because the customer will tell you what they want. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, the customer told them how to build their product. Technology is your business. Remove any barriers between your technology and your strategic decision makers, or your innovators internally. Remove those barriers. These people should be working day in, day out. Technology is no longer just a competency, it's actually now a given that every single person in the company should have an appreciation of technology and possibilities. With those 2 in mind, start realizing you're creating experiences. Stop creating products, create experiences. Realizing that actually the checking account hasn't changed much in 4 or 5 decades. What has changed is the experience around it. So focus on what you're actually enabling in someone's life. And the last one, just do something. This is my plea to bankers. I've been to so many banks where I give them all the recipe for success and they still do nothing. I encourage you to do something today, whether it's go and check your bank brand on Twitter. Go and buy one of those books. That's a start. Start your journey today. And keep doing something every day. Encourage your team. Be a champion for innovators inside your company. One of the things I plead with everyone, I'm going to accredit you all right now, you're all FUD police. What that means is that your responsibility now is to shoot down every single time you hear anything about fear, uncertainty, or doubt. That's your responsibility as innovators. Realizing when you just get out of the negative and move forward. I go on the excuses side again, I don't need to read that one. Last slide. So the last little reminder, our little friend Timmy, we've said about he's going to choose his primary banking relationship in 2017. He'll be high net worth in 2030. So if you don't get him in 2017, you won't have a high net worth business in 2030. So that's the end of my deck. If you're going to do one thing today, if you want to stay connected to innovation, here's my Twitter handle. Follow me and I'll tell you every single day what to do. Now, I'm one of the most prolific tweeters in the banking space. Reach out to me, have a conversation with me. I'm always available on Twitter. I'm out tweeting 10 times on stage. I just want you to try something new every single day. It doesn't matter if it's this big or it's a gigantic project. And innovators, I just want you to try something. That's one takeaway. Try something every single day. Thank you. You didn't get to give away the second book, by the way.
Thanks very much. I'll just get up to stay for 1 minute here because he's on a bit of the schedule. And so I'm wondering if anybody in the audience has one question. And we got some.
Yeah, maybe half an hour. We're only holding us back in tea break, aren't we?
Correct.
My car doesn't leave for half an hour, so everyone has questions.
So let's see if we've got any questions here. Has anyone got a question?
Thanks, Scott. Just wondering what your thoughts are as to physical bank branches in the future. Do you think they're still in place? Can they evolve with consumer behaviour, or is it a dying space?
So there's 2 parts of the bank branch. From a consumer experience or a behavioural point of view, we need to break the branch down into 2 roles. One is like transactional, deposit withdrawals, parts of origination, mortgage signing. That role will disappear. Okay, absolute guarantee. The role as a branch inside a transactional piece will disappear. What I still see an important part of is the branch as an extension of brand. Think about the Apple Store. I've seen so many projects where banks have decided to build Apple Store branches. The Apple Store is just a flagship of the brand and a way that you can connect face-to-face with that brand, if you have to. The reality is Apple still sells a large majority of their product through digital channels, through the online Apple Store, and a small amount of their stores. But it means you can go to the Genius Bar, you can go and actually play with these products, get your hands on and touch it. That role won't change. It won't be as big as what it is today. I'm still predicting that you'll see greater than 50% closures in branches globally over the next 10 years, but the role will move to more of a flagship brand engagement shop kind of thing. You'll probably find that if you look at metropolitan areas like Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne, they'll go from hundreds of branches down to maybe a half dozen.
I'm quite surprised that you talked about the 17-year-old and the loyalty. Not surprised about the two reasons why it might change. But do you think the loyalty is more apathy?
Loyalty into brand?
Yeah.
So one of the things to realise, and this is why I try and focus on the why as opposed to what just to do, is one of the challenges we have in banks right now is they'll just say, okay, mobile banking is what I need to do. So they'll copy mobile banking from the best out there in the world. And the challenge is once we move beyond mobile banking, they're back to where they were. Is the reason these consumers stay loyal, particularly the young ones, is because those experiences evolve. The reason that we went from MySpace to Facebook is because social networking evolved into a whole new experience. So when I say loyalty, is if you want to remain loyal customers, you're going to have to maintain this over a long period of time. You can't just build mobile banking and think you're set for the next 50 years. You have to be open to the idea that the market could shift in 12 months' time. So in terms of loyalty, particularly in the Gen Ys, will be driven by your ability to continually iterate on innovation, as opposed to just a one-time event. So basically, can you keep up with the Joneses or even be ahead?
Question on mobile payments. Crystal ball, how far away do you think this before it's mainstream?
So it already is mainstream. Numbers suggest globally that, particularly if you look at Square, for instance, they take 1/7 of all point-of-sale transactions in the US. That makes them almost as big as WorldPay. To me, that is mainstream. The transaction volumes going in multiple markets right now is already mainstream. If you look at some of the numbers, I'm sure Nick's got numbers, and there are consumers that use mobile already. The numbers are already there. The hard part is that last bridge. How do we talk about the point-of-sale transaction? What does that experience look like? Challenge in a lot of in the developed markets like the US, UK, and Australia is we're still stuck in this turf war battle of who owns that technology that does that. Does Telstra own the SIM? Does the bank own what? And so forth. Is what you're going to find is that the longer that debate happens, the more open people are to be disintermediated. It will happen. You choose to be a part of it or be left behind. One of the trends I'm actually predicting right now in the United States, because of the debate between the telcos and the banks, is you're going to find very soon someone's going to come up with a technology that doesn't require either of them and completely bypass them. They'll get left behind. So the reality is that they're already at mainstream volume on a number of different platforms. It's just the way we participate.
Doctor, it's interesting that you mentioned that example, this one observation. What do you see as the role of the regulators in this new world, and what's your experience been in that regard?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate. I've actually helped write regulation in 6 countries for a little while. And there are some good regulators and some bad regulators. One of the things that I get very frustrated with, particularly from the banking community, is waiting for the regulator to tell them what they can do. The reality is the regulator spends no money on innovation. And that's not their role. Their role is protection of the system. To protect monetary policy, to protect the consumer, to maintain the authenticity and trust within the system. I encourage regulators to stick to that role. Don't go into prescriptive regulation, so telling what banks can and can't do with technology. Just know that if you meet these six compliance reasons around protecting the consumer, then it doesn't matter what technology you use. It's around moving back to protecting the system, as opposed to saying you can't use cloud. If you use mobile payments, you have to use the SIM for a secure element. That's the wrong regulation. The banks, as a cooperative themselves, should be determining what's most ideal for the market. The banks commercially at an advantage. They're the ones that stand to benefit from their shifts, so they should be setting the benchmark. And it should be an idea is that they're taking gambles and saying to the regulator, okay, look, when we did this thing with NFC payments in Sydney, we learned X, Y, Z. We think you should consider these updates to regulation from a system protection point of view, but nothing prescriptive. And that's how we draft regulation in Malaysia, Cambodia, Nigeria, to actually say that let's focus on protecting the consumer, not determining what technology should and shouldn't exist.
Scott, speaking of technology, NFC seems to be the way forward. Yeah, Apple patenting and not playing. What's your thoughts on it?
So Apple's realised something that everyone else has realised. Is, well, I mean, Apple has a 12-month product cycle for their iPhone anyway. Is they realised that they didn't have to do NFC for 2013 in the US market. There's no commercial advantage for them to be. The scale NFC wasn't going to be there that they wanted to play. They were happy for people like Google and Visa and MasterCard to throw millions of dollars at market acceptance and adoption before they actually enter the space. No doubt they're secretly strategizing somewhere around how they can take a commercial advantage from the technology, like we've done with President. They will eventually play. They'll just wait until... The reality is Apple's never first at anything. No matter what people say, Apple has never been first at anything. There was a tablet before the iPad. There was a music store before iTunes. You know, a design-led computer existed before the iMac. They were never first. They just did it at the ideal time. And that's their forte. Quiet audience.
Scott, with the change in disruption technologies, and we talk about things where the notes are disappearing and so forth, and people are moving towards credit cards. But the death of the credit card is coming as well, where the phone and or the device or whatever it is, and the SIM cards where you actually get a phone SIM card with a credit card built into it. You know, where's that going?
So the important part is to break apart what exists. Well, let's take a current credit card. Can I use someone's credit card for a second? Anyone got an EMV card or even a contactless one on them? This is a good question because the idea is to break the technology down. Yep, so Mastercard PayPass. Right, so there's 4 generations of technology in this piece of plastic. And the first credit card was issued back in 1948 by Americard. And the technology has evolved over multiple generations. Previously, it was just a piece of cardboard. On this plastic, that's not very obvious in this, there's a mag stripe on the back. Okay, that's actually the second generation of this credit card, not the first. The first is actually the numbers here, and these numbers represent a point-to-point connection in a network. So first and foremost, the credit card companies are a network. They use the VIN routing and the PAN routing to know that if I go to McDonald's, they know how to get money from me. So that's the first layer of technology. The second piece is around the account, the credit piece. So it's saying that they'll actually issue credit above my current deposit base to allow me to actually spend. The reason credit existed, by the way, was because the inter-party settlement for the first credit card couldn't allow for real time. So you actually had to issue credit to allow for that T+3 scenario. So it says if I spend $1,000 at McDonald's today, I'm pretty hungry, it was actually the credit for it to take the clearing time. So that's how credit cards started. The third part is the issuance piece. That's this little thing. Is the piece of plastic. It's around. We've gone from the old voucher system, then we went to mag stripes, the swipe system, then we've gone to EMV, stick it in and put a pin, and then you've even got PayPass. This actually has the technology for NFC. The technology inside this credit card is exactly the same as the mobile issued NFC. My Samsung X3 has the exact same architecture inside. So when you separate, you realise that only parts of that will be replaced, and that's the issuance side. The idea of a credit or a debit account will still exist based on the PAN, and the network will still exist. It's just the issuance piece will change. And what we're actually seeing is that, and this is why Visa and MasterCard are very heavily incentivized to actually do something here, because if we can skip their rails, because let's get Visa Net and MasterCard Net, if we ever skip them, they're completely out of business. So you'll probably find the network will remain in place. You'll find the accounts piece, the credit, debit, prepaid thing will remain in place. It's just the actual instrument that you use to access those two things will change. Make sense?
Yeah. I was figuring, the phones now coming out with that whole credit card look inside the phone. There's no need for that plastic.
No, there's no need for the plastic, but there's still a need for the MasterCard, and there's still a need for, in your case, you're with Commonwealth Bank. So Commonwealth Bank, who issue you the credit to have this account, Those two roles remain. It's just that the instrument you use them. Thanks, mate.
Richard, one more question.
Yes, I'd be interested in your views on the concept of, in my view, the biggest threat to banking in the near term is the cost base. And we don't talk about this, how do we actually deliver these services? How much it
CTI.
costs to deliver it? Sorry?
Do you mean like CTI?
Yeah, well, essentially,